already covered kind of the first verse, the Lord is my shepherd, right? You know what a shepherd is, the sheep, the care, the protection, all of that. Make me lie down, or he settles me down in green pastures. Anybody see any green pastures here?
No. Wait.
Do you see any?
There's green over there.
Anybody see green pastures?
No.
What are you looking for? The tree's over here.
So, you know, I think our picture in our minds is that green pastures is sort of waist-high alfalfa. And we kind of, you know, remember that Nestea commercial? Go back into a pool. Just, waist-high alfalfa. This is awesome. Well, that's not the deal. Shepherds know where the green pastures are. The green pastures are where the shepherd takes the sheep to find food. And green pastures are, well, little sprigs of something between these rocks. You know, at nighttime the dew will come and it will form and pool between those rocks, and a little sprig of something will start to grow between the rocks. And so the shepherd takes the sheep to find the green pastures, the food, because the sheep don't know where the food are. Sheep can't actually see more than 6 feet in front of their face. They're basically blind. They don't know where they're going. And so the shepherd has to settle them down in the green pastures so that they can eat. It's kind of nice, isn't it? God doesn't sort of fill our freezer with 10 years worth of provision. He kind of takes us as a shepherd one day at a time and leads us to this green pasture. Now we have enough for one day, and now we have enough for the next day, and now we have enough. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You think that would kind of teach us a little bit of trust in the shepherd?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you bet it would, right?
Yeah.
Green pasture. He leads me beside
Still water.
what kind of water?
Still.
Water. Calm water.
Still water, or really the word is quiet water. So there's two kinds of water in the desert. There's wadi water and there's spring water, or still water, or quiet water. Wadi water and still water. Wadi water will kill you. What's wadi water?
Flash flood.
Flash flood. When it rains in Jerusalem, water barrels down this wadi, and it can take you unsuspecting. The Parks Authority warns people every year, don't hike the wadi, don't hike the wadis. There's rain in the mountains, and people disregard it, and every year somebody gets killed or swept away in a flash flood.
Wow.
One of the most frequent causes of death in the desert is drowning.
That is so crazy.
Isn't that weird?
Not falling.
One of the most frequent causes of death in the desert is drowning because of the flash flood. That's wadi water, right? That's dangerous water. You don't take your sheep into a wadi when it's dangerous. You take them to the springs of water, the quiet water, the still water, and the shepherd knows where that is. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Remember the story that Jesus told at the end of the Sermon on the Mount about the wise man and the foolish man? Mm-hmm. Remember that? Remember, wise man built his house upon the rock.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
And the foolish man built his house upon the sand. So at the bottom of a wadi, and the rains came down.
Rains came
At the bottom of the
tumbling
wadi,
down.
at the bottom of a wadi is sand. After the water rushes through, there's sand at the bottom of the wadi. This would be a hilarious illustration to Jesus' audience, what he's telling us. Because only a Josh would build his house on the sand. Sorry, I'm still in the wadi, man. I got a new one. You got to write that down, man.
That's a good one. Salah.
What?
Can't read viral.
Be careful, he's going to put it on his Facebook page.
All right, so only a Josh would build his house in a wadi. Nobody builds their house in a wadi on the sand, except for Josh. The people are watching. So the wise man built his house on a rock, up there, out of the wadi. Nobody builds their house in a wadi. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so There's Wadi water, which is dangerous, and the shepherd leads to the quiet water. What's next? He restores my soul. I used to think that was like refreshes my soul.
How the NIV
Is it?
Yeah.
So it's refreshes?
That's what it. Do anyone reading the NIV?
Yeah, who's got that? Yeah.
I mean, that's what
I
mine
got the
had
ESV.
was refreshing.
Yeah.
He restores is what you see.
Restores,
Is it?
refreshes. Except for, you know what the Hebrew verb is? He shuves my soul. Shuv. Shuv. Well, brings back. Brings back. To bring back. Right? And so my soul is the nephesh. It's my whole being. My whole being. You know, when a sheep is alone and it wanders off and it gets alone, it panics. Because it's away from the flock. And it starts bleeding. You know, not bleeding. Bleeding. Yeah. And that, of course, that bleeding draws predators. Because the sheep's all alone. And the sheep's in trouble. And the predators know it. And so, what does the shepherd do when the sheep is off all alone?
Calls him.
He goes to look for him.
He goes out and he brings him back. The shepherd brings me back. When I'm out by myself, when I'm all alone, when the predators are surrounding me, and he brings back the lost sheep. Any shepherds you know
Jesus.
that went out and
Sounds
looked
like the
for
answer's
a
Jesus.
lost sheep, you know, that was all by itself, and he restored that sheep's nephesh, our soul, right? And brings him back.
I do.
Yeah, right?
I do.
You know it? Yeah.
My deceased husband was born in Albania, the Greek part of Albania. They were very rich. They owned close to 10,000 sheep and goats.
Yeah.
He was 8. He had to bring them all up into the mountains, and they stayed for days. But there was always one that went off, and if he didn't find it, the wolves are huge there. And all he had to do was call.
And they came.
And they came.
I wish we could be as responsive as that.
Yeah. Well, here's the next line then. He guides me in paths of righteousness. The word is tzedek. Tzedek. Paths of righteousness. Now, I used to think that was, do the right things. He guides me to do the right things. So, if you looked at the paths of the sheep out in the desert, did you look at those little trails? Did any of them look straight? No. They're like zigzag this way, up and down. So if a shepherd calls a sheep, the sheep will not avoid the hazards. They'll just come. And so they need to follow the right paths to the shepherd. It's restoring the sheep to the shepherd. He leads me in right paths, in right relationship with the shepherd. Now, it's maybe not going to be a straight line. It's going to be more like a zigzag line. At least that's what my spiritual life and growth looks like. It doesn't look like a straight climb. It looks like more like a zigzag. And so he leads us in paths in right relationship with him, ultimately. And he does it for his name's sake.
Yes, right. Glorify him.
Because if you know the Aaronic blessing, the Lord bless you and keep you, make his face in Numbers chapter 6. We never really read the verse right after the Aaronic blessing. It says, I will put my name on them.
Yeah.
I will put my name on them. And so he guides us in right relationship with himself so that we will bear his name and that we will represent his character. Does that make sense? All right. I'm going to save the valley of the shadow of death for a little bit later. There's one more stop we'll make. And we'll get that. You are, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. So a rod and a staff. A shepherd has a rod and a staff. So the staff is a symbol of providing for the flock. It's actually an image of a ruler. If you see pictures of Pharaoh, the images of Pharaoh, Pharaoh's holding a crooked staff very often as a leader, as a ruler. So the staff is a symbol of providing and leading the flock. What's a staff used for, though? It could be a walking stick, right, for the shepherd. Could be out in this desert. It could be a crook for a sheep that falls off the path. Kind of reel them in, right, off the path. reach down, pull it back, steer the flock a little bit. Maybe for lifting up the wool and examining the sores and tending to those injuries on the sheep. You never beat the sheep. You never beat the sheep, but you guide the sheep. You comfort the sheep. When they stumble, your staff humbly and in an easy way guides them back onto the path.
Yeah.
Now a rod is a different thing. A shepherd has a rod. What's a rod?
For protection against.
Well,
Protection from the
well, a rod is used for beating,
Okay.
but not the flock.
No.
You don't beat the flock with the rod. You ward off predators and thieves. A club was about 2 feet long, probably with a little metal in the end of it. And so when a predator came, you'd whack it over the head and you'd protect the sheep. So David, had his sling, had his rod, and he protected the sheep from predators. So this is about leading, guiding, and protecting. A rod and a staff, right? So, and we already did the last part. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. This is about hospitality and hosting. Surely goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell safely in the house of the Lord, not just for 3 days, but forever.
Forever. That's right.
He's our host. He's the most hospitable Bedouin you've ever met. And takes us into his home. And overflowing with joy and provision. So that's Psalm 23. Pretty cool images, huh?
Tell you what, I feel the presence of God here amongst us. He's strong right now as you've been talking. You make things so simple. I really like your teaching.
Well, it's just images, it's pictures. Right? Eastern people like to see pictures. And they like images. And so that's what we've seen in Psalm 23. David's a inspired author of Scripture, wrote that. So there's one line that we have to do yet, and that's the valley of the shadow of death. It's scary, right?
I see the desert as the valley of the shadow of death.
But we're going to stop one more time ahead, and then we'll